You're listening to Birthing at Home, a podcast. I'm Elsie, your host. I recorded this episode on unceded Wurundjeri land in Naarm, Melbourne, Australia, where Aboriginal peoples had been birthing at home, on country, for thousands of years prior to the British invasion. They are the original storytellers. If you want to learn more about me, the podcast, or how I can support you in achieving your home birth, be sure to check out my Instagram at birthingathome_apodcast. Episode 35 is shared by Courtney from Lake Macquarie. Courtney is a doula and PT and is a home birth mama. Courtney shares her journey of having a birth centre birth and then her wholesome and beautiful home birth story with now 9-month-old Pacey. We also chat about diet culture and our society's obsession with restricting and non-intuitive eating, even in pregnancy. Now, before we begin, I would also like to let you all know that I am excited to now be offering doula services across the spectrum of pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. You can find out more on my Instagram or by checking out the offerings on my website at www.birthingathome.apodcast. Now for another amazing home birth story. Welcome, Courtney, to Birthing at Home, a podcast.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm so excited to have you on today. I think it's been a little time coming, but finally we're here.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think it has been a little while as well because I think you had your trip to India, which looked amazing. But yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Do you want to start off by telling the listeners like a little bit about who you are, where you live, who's in your family?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am Courtney. I am located in Lake Macquarie, which is, kind of between Newcastle and Sydney in New South Wales. And I live here with my husband and my 2 boys. My oldest is almost 3 and my youngest right here is almost 7 months old. And yeah, I guess a little bit outside of being a mum, I am also a doula. So I work in the birth space supporting women throughout, pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. And that's a little passion of mine that came about after having my first son. And that's a huge part, of my story. And it's really impacted, a lot of like what I do and what I've done in the past. But that's pretty much the brink of it. That's what I feel like I do spend most of my days doing, either mumming or, doulaing in some capacity. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Stepping into like doula work, like only after you had Dax, who you said will be 3 in June. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Like growing up and, in like early adulthood, like what was your thoughts around pregnancy or birth, let alone not even home birth, but just like pregnancy and birth?
Well, that's funny. Yeah. So that's literally where it all kind of stems from for me. I grew up really conditioned to believe that birth was this really bad, traumatic medical thing that you go through and it's a bit of a burden. And I was really conditioned to believe that. And for the longest part, I was like, well, I'm not going to have kids because who would want to put themselves through that and like, go through all that trauma and like carry that with them. So, for a really long time, I was like, I don't want to have kids. And I was trying to convince my husband to adopt. Like that's literally how much I did not want to be pregnant and give birth. I was like, that is not for me. Like people would try to show me like birth photos. And I'd be like, get that away from me. Like I do not want to be like, I've done like a huge 360. Like it's insane to like think where I am now. Like I was just saying to someone yesterday, I was like, if someone told me like 5 years ago, like I would be where I am now, I would be like, that's a joke. Like honestly, like it's just so like, it's just the complete opposite, honestly.
Yeah.
And like going back to that, my husband was like, well, I just want to have like 1 kid on my own, just like 1. And I was like, well, gosh, surely like I've got to do something. Like there has to be something that I can do to not go in so scared. And that was the thing. Like I had so much fear around it just from what I was told or how birth was perceived to me. I was like, there has to be something I can do to just like be a little bit less scared. And that just led me down a rabbit hole of birth education.
Wow.
Like that just changed my complete perception on birth. I was like, wow, birth does not have to be scary. It doesn't have to be medicated, doesn't have to be, you know, this big traumatic thing. It's normal and it's natural. And yeah, that's kind of where everything has stemmed from that. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Do you know how you were born?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So my mum didn't have a great birth experience. She had a, like 3-day labor or something like that. And I was born by the forceps and really traumatic, and just, yeah, that's where my main idea of birth came from. I love my mum, obviously, but yeah, I just always remember hearing how, you know, my birth was so bad, and did all these things, and then she ended up having cesarean, like with my brother, like a planned one from her birth with me. And then I just remember she didn't have a great recovery from that cesarean, so then that was also etched in my brain. Like her recovery was so long and hard. So that is like a lot of where my fear around birth came from.
And had you ever heard of home birth, or like, do you?
Gosh, probably not back then. And I think back then if someone told me that they were having a home birth, I would have been like,
you're mad.
Weirdo. Like, good for you, but that's a bit weird. Like I don't think I probably knew what home birth was till like, maybe like once I went down that rabbit hole and I found where I birthed my first son, like they offered home birth. That's probably the first time I'd really ever heard of it or understood what it actually was. Yeah,
wow. I always love hearing like the journey to finding home birth, because more often than not, like that is like society's perception of home birth, like just like you're weird, you're crazy.
Or like,
that's really
like everyone has these really ideas that birth is so medical and scary. That's like, well, why would you do that at home without anything? You know what I mean? It's like,
surely it must be worse then. Like if it's already bad in hospital, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's like mad. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But so Dax was born in a birth center, which is pretty cool, I think, because there aren't like a lot of birth centers. Like in Victoria, there's no birth centers.
Yeah.
So
I think there's only like not even a handful, I think, in Australia. I don't think that's
I think there's one like in Perth, maybe. And I know maybe there's like a couple in New South Wales, but like apart from that,
I don't think there's a lot of them.
So do you want to walk us through like your pregnancy experience with Dax and like how you landed on like birth center?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess how I landed on birth center, that started before I was even pregnant. Like once I went down that rabbit hole, I found out about Belmont, who offers the birth center and home births where I am. And I was like, that's it. That's where I'm birthing. Like you couldn't pay me to go into a hospital. Like the birth center, like that's where it's at. Like that's where I'm giving birth. There's no option. And then when I found out I was pregnant, like I went to the, you do the classic thing, you go to the doctor, and like one of the first things I said, I was like, I'm pregnant, but like I'm birthing at Belmont. He was like, all right, just settle down a bit. Like you just peed on the stick? I was like, only a limited amount of women get into this program. I was like, I want to be one of those. And he was like I'm not going to send her. I think, he was like, I'm not going to send her a referral now. Like, we'll just wait a little bit. I think that's like classic, like, you're really early, like who knows what's going to happen type thing. But I was like so adamant. I was like, if I miss out on a spot, like that's my only option. Like there felt like there was no other option for me, like at that point. But that's how I guess I led. It's all right. How I led to go to the birth center. But my pregnancy with Dax was, it was hard. It was really, really hard. With both my boys, I've been sick for the first 25 weeks. So just like 24/7, like nausea, like vomiting with Dax, just pretty much, all day, every day. And then aside from that, I mentally really, really struggled with Dax's pregnancy. Like that was the hardest 9 months of my life. I never got diagnosed with anything, and I hid it really well, which was like a bit of a toxic trait of mine before I had kids, just like not sharing a lot. But I definitely would have had that perinatal depression and anxiety. I cried every day. I napped for like 5 to 6 hours a day. I just honestly just got through each day. Like I'd go to work, I'd come home, eat my breakfast, vomit up my food. Like at this point I was working in a gym, so doing really early mornings. Come home, vomit everything up, sleep for 4 to 6 hours, which is just insane. And then every time I had to leave the house, I would just cry. Like, honestly, like it was just like the hardest thing like I have ever done. Like his pregnancy is like such a struggle. So yeah, I guess that was pretty much like the brink of it. Like apart from being, really anxious and I hate saying depressed, but like that's what I felt like. And then really sick, just everything combined and not knowing and understanding like what my body, I guess, was going through that first time. It's a bit of a whirlwind, do you know what I mean? Like each day you're like, what's happening now? Like what's going to happen next? Like, and his pregnancy really brought up a lot of, I guess, like old wounds, like old mental health issues, like, you know, from being a young girl. And I've always been quite into fitness and stuff like that. And I guess just watching my body change without having any sense of control, like I think that's where a lot of it spurred from, like, and that just sent me down like the biggest rabbit hole, like like a really big spiral. So that was really hard. His pregnancy was
it's such a like I struggle with that as well, like such a, I want to say a mind fuck because I guess, you know, in my experience growing up as like a young girl, young woman, like you want to look like a certain way, or like society accepts like one certain sort of body type, I guess. And I guess to some extent you can control that through like restricting your eating, whether it's, you know, unhealthy or whatever, but restricting or exercising or like just dysregulated eating habits. But like with pregnancy, like you're not in control. I have like a colleague that is pregnant, and she was saying the other day, like, I just want to eat. I'm so hungry, but like I'm trying not to eat because I really don't want to gain too much weight. And I just felt so sad because like that's what we're taught.
We're conditioned to believe like that's what we should do, right?
And I think there's so much like unhelpful messages out there on like eating habits in pregnancy, like, you know, how like once upon a time you know, they used to say, oh, you can eat for 2, and now it's like you're not eating for 2. And so I think women are just like generally confused about like, well, how much can I eat? Like if I'm hungry, can I like eat, you know?
And I hate that because like my second pregnancy was like very intuitive, and I'm just like, pregnancy is meant to be that intuitive thing. It's like, if you're hungry, eat, you know what I mean? And like it's a time to connect to your body, but all these things like socially, medically are disconnecting women from their intuition, like throughout their pregnancy, their birth and their postpartum. And like that's like such a big like that's such an issue, right? Like disconnecting people from women from their intuition in like such a important and vulnerable time, like and
it has so many like on flow effects because like we can't even like thinking about it, you can't even like trust your own body to tell you if it's actually hungry or not. Like you tell it like it is wild, hey. And I think, I don't know, like I know a lot of places do like weighing in a lot of their videos, and it's like, of course, like that in itself is triggering for so many women. And like to know like how much weight you're gaining, and it's wild because a lot of it is the baby and the fluid and everything, and like it's actually normal to gain some weight. But like there is like this fear, I don't know if it's fear, it's like this obsession probably is better the word, obsession about how much weight you're putting on, and like is it going to risk you out of things, and like your mind, all that stuff. And I'm just like, it's a bit of BS, honestly. Like just let the woman grow her baby, and like I don't know, like absolutely. And BMI in pregnancy is just like a whole thing. Did you, so the reason you found the birth center was because of the pre-pregnancy like education or like rabbit hole that you'd gone down? Did you do any other like specific birth education kind of stuff during the pregnancy with Dax?
Yeah, a little bit. So it was kind of like COVID time, if you want to
of course.
throw that in.
Yeah, 'cause it was 2021?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, he was born in 2021. So we did actually B from Core and Flora stores
cool.
her antenatal
Yep.
stuff just online, and that was really great. Like that was yeah, like just like a lot of practical stuff, I guess, for my husband. Like by that point I felt like back then like I knew a lot, I guess, from all the education, and my husband was super like on board. Like he wanted to know whatever I kind of knew. He was very supportive in that sense. But yeah, we did her antenatal classes, which were really great. Like we could do them in our own pace, in our own living room. Like so that was awesome. But that was probably like the brink of it, apart from like my own little bits of like birth education and, you know, the classic like what is it, Australian birth stories. I feel like that was a huge thing when I was pregnant with Dax. I don't know if it's as big of a thing now, but like that was a really big thing that I listened to, and I did love that because it did go through a lot of different, I guess, circumstances and women's kind of stories. But yeah, that was the main sources of education that we did. Yeah.
I actually think it was like big around when I had Murphy in 2020 as well. It must have had that. I feel like maybe that's when it blew up, but because that's obviously a very successful podcast now. But and did you like what in your experience with the birth center was the sort of exclusion, inclusion stuff? Like, did you have to do certain testing? Could you decline certain things? Like,
so you could decline, and that was there was no kind of like backlash about declining anything. I declined. I didn't do any of the testing, so to say, like apart from, you know, like those blood tests, like for, you know, the classic iron. That was like probably the biggest concern. But like I didn't do gestational diabetes, I didn't do GBS, all that kind of stuff, and that was fine. Like there was no, I think honestly my midwife at the time kind of preferred it because she was like, yeah, sweet, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't something that she then not had to worry about, but like it wasn't a thing that we had to, I guess, come across and deal with if something came up. So I declined those, and I felt confident doing that, and that was seamless, really.
And you know, I guess in comparison to your then home birth experience, like birthing in a birth center is already sort of like a step outside of the square, you know. Did anyone have like any like comments about not birth? Because like, is the birth center still attached to the hospital, or is it a separate sort of building?
So it's attached to a hospital, but not the hospital where people are birthing. So here we have John Hunter, which is like the main, like one of the main hospitals. And then Belmont is attached to Belmont Hospital, which is just one of those like secondary, like more, it's a public hospital, but it's not, doesn't do a lot of the
birth stuff.
So connected to a hospital, but not connected to the hospital where you'd birth. So if you needed to get transferred, you were put in an ambulance and you were taken over to John.
Oh, really? Oh, that's so intriguing.
It is. Yeah.
Okay. Did anyone have like any commentary about, you know, choosing to birth at the birth center?
Yeah, absolutely.
Really? Wow.
Like, especially so at the time, like I said, I was working in like a gym.
Yeah.
And like just the opinions there was like probably the biggest thing. Like, like I'm birthing here. They're like, oh, like you can't have anything there. Like you can't have an epidural. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's fine. Like I'm planning not to have one. And just like the eye rolls or like the scare tactics, like that was a really big thing. The amount of women, and I feel like they probably were trying to do it out of, you know, like not wanting their experience to happen to me. But it was very much like, oh, like I birthed like this and this was my birth experience. Like I don't know how you would ever do it without an epidural or not have, you know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. So there was a lot of fear. Not like there was a lot of fear, I guess, around it in that setting. My family and stuff were okay. I think my mum was a bit like, oh, like if something happens, like what do you do? And I'm like, well, like I'm not like birthing in the sticks, you know what I mean? Like there's still support there. So I think for them, like for my mum, it did maybe take a little bit like to come to terms with, but she was like she was pretty fine, I guess, about it. The biggest thing I found for them to wrap their head around was like at Belmont, after you birth, if everything's fine, you go home in like 4 hours.
Yeah, wow.
That was the biggest thing. My family and my husband's family like, what do you mean you go home? And I was like, I don't know, you just go home. Like, obviously, but like then I had never done it, but I was like, well, I don't want to stay in hospital. Like hospitals just give me that ick feeling staying there for an extended amount of time. Like if I don't have to, I want to be in my own bed.
100%,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was like the biggest thing. They're like, well, like what happens if you need something? And I'm like, well, the midwife will come the next day, or like I'm not without support. Like I can, you know what I mean? I can call people. So that was the biggest thing I think for like family to get their head around. They're like that's a bit weird. Aren't you meant to stay in hospital for like 5 days or like a couple of days?
That's crazy. Wow. Yeah. And that was about the birth center.
Yeah. My mother-in-law was like, so like when I come meet him, like how does that happen? I was like, oh, like you won't meet him at the hospital. She's like, oh, but like I have to give birth, like I'll just come say hi. And I was like, oh no, like we'll be home in 4 hours. She's like, oh, but I'll just meet him in the car park. She's like, her idea was like, I've got to meet this baby. Like,
yeah. And like I guess that's like the symbolism as well. Yeah. That's like so ingrained. Yeah. What was I was like listening to maybe a different podcast. Oh yeah. So I've started listening to this podcast called Birth on Film. And it's like a couple in Canberra, I think it is, and she's a midwife, and I don't know what he does, but they review like birth scenes in movies, and they reviewed like the birth scene in like one of the Twilight movies the other day, and they were talking about how like suddenly Bella, you know, one of the main characters is like wearing a hospital gown, like, but there's no reason why she would be wearing a hospital, like it was just simply the symbolism of like birth equals hospital gown, and like it's like you can't separate them because then it's not a birth. It has to just so bizarre, like
crazy, isn't it?
So strange. But that's so she couldn't get over that she wouldn't be going to the hospital. I think like some just pausing here to thank the May sponsor for the podcast, Let's Talk Birth, and share a discount code with you all. At Let's Talk Birth, they're dedicated to providing unwavering support to women as they prepare for childbirth and beyond. You can discover tailored doula support, curated products, and expert guidance from endorsed midwives and certified lactation consultants, all in one convenient place. Join their community and experience a space of knowledge, compassion, and shared experiences as you navigate your pregnancy, birth, and postpartum journey. We hold the mother while she holds the baby. For an exclusive 15% off this May, use the code ELSIE15, that's ELSIE15 at checkout. You can visit letstalkbirth.au to see all of their amazing products. I recently got the Bink glass water bottle and I love it, but they have amazing carriers and very, very cool brands in store. So make sure you check it out. And thank you again so much, Let's Talk Birth, for supporting the podcast. Okay, now we get on with the rest of the episode. To some extent, like that, you know, you could see that that's like in society sort of like a rite of passage as like a grandparent, like, you know, going to the hospital, meeting your grandchild, like
that's what happened. Yeah. And I think like, you know, they had probably heard of like, you know, their friends doing that with their grandbabies, and there was this thing, and I was like, I couldn't think of anything worse. Why do you want to be in a hospital? Yeah. Like, and like she was so set, and I was like, wouldn't you just want to like meet them in our home, like
and you can stay and just like sit on the couch, and
and it's like it's not like that awkward like sterile type of environment. I honestly think also like birthing the birth center, I'm kind of, my family call me like that black sheep, like that person that does like weird stuff, so I'll just probably like classic Courtney, birthing in the birth center, like going home after 4 hours, like that's just classic her, you know what I mean? Like, like, good on you for trying and doing that. Like, I feel like that probably was, like, a little bit, like, of everyone's thinking as well. But,
Oh, my goodness. I wanted to ask as well, I guess, you know, in your experience working in the fitness, or having at least experience in, like, the fitness industry, like, what do you think, like, the perception of like natural because like fitness to me, I guess, is like an appreciation of like your body and like how your body works. And like, I don't know if I'm going to articulate this very well, but I think there's also like within society, you know, like this expectation that if you were fit before, then you've got to try and maintain some level of fitness whilst you're pregnant and like keep working out. And that is obviously amazing. I wish I had been able to do that. But the thought of lifting weights, feeling so horrible is just not for me. But like, I guess, you know, working in fitness, you have like an appreciation and understanding of like how your body works. But I see, whether it's just like the algorithm showing me stuff, but I see like time and time again women that are fit or, you know, engage in a lot of like sport or, you know, gym and stuff, and they end up having, you know, quite, you know, birth experiences that require like a lot of intervention and sort of, you know, heading the way that the medical system seems to then place on them, oh no, your body actually can't do this, even though they work in fitness and, you know, presumably have like a base understanding of like the body does work, and it's pretty I want to say flexible, but like, you know,
I guess it's capable, right? It's capable of doing hard things.
Yeah, it's capable of doing hard things. In your experience, like working in the fitness industry, like, have you got a sense of like any common, I mean, obviously in your experience, you know, people thought you were kind of crazy for like no epidurals and stuff.
Yeah.
But in that culture, do you find that there is sort of still, you know, this heavily ingrained perception that, oh no, birth, you do actually need people to do stuff to your body?
Yeah, I have found that. Yeah, like I found that it's still very much the same, which blows my mind. So I'm like, oh, like you can do all this stuff pre-pregnant and, you know, not in a birthing state, but then like, oh, when you're pregnant or when you're giving birth, then your body loses all its capability. You know what I mean? So I do find that a lot of the stories still are very much heavily ingrained in the medical system. Like I was sitting in a circle of like women after a gym session the other week, and there was probably like 5 of us all mums, and they were all talking about their OBs and, you know, their births, and they were all very heavily ingrained in like some kind of intervention. And they were like, yeah, I needed that. Like I need, like, you know, like I needed that. Like my body needed that. I couldn't do it without. And here I am, like post home birth, going, I like, you know what I mean? Like you guys are here, and I guess for background, like I'm in a CrossFit gym, like that's my sport, so to say. And like, you know, some of these women, like they're incredible in the gym, and I'm like, CrossFit is hard. You know what I mean? And I'm like, girl, if you can do like this, you can birth without that. You know what I mean? But I think it's just ingrained in us that we do need that support and we do need that help, and then our body might fail us. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of the time it's like, oh, I'll just do that in case my body fails me. Like, so the trust isn't even there kind of from the start. So I do feel like it is still very much, heavily ingrained in the medical side of things for sure. I just find it so interesting. Because when you think about like natural birth or normal birth or whatever, and like the people that might be more inclined to choose that sort of pathway, you would think that it is like people that, you know, are like in the fitness industry, but like the medical it gets in there and it does things.
Yeah, the thing is in all the pies. Anyway, I would love to hear about the birth of Dax.
So I guess how it unfolded, I finished work I worked up to like 38 weeks, something ridiculous, like, you know what I mean? So the first baby, I was like, I'll just keep working, like it'll be fine. I worked up to 38 weeks, and in my 38th week, I was just kind of like at that point where I was like done, you know what I mean? Like not like done being pregnant, but like, I don't know, my brain was like, this is like the end. And I'm like, is it the end? Because I'm only 38 weeks pregnant. Like, but I couldn't like articulate like how I was feeling. Like, and people were like, oh, like you're still pregnant. I was like, yeah, but like I don't think it's going to be long. And they're like, I don't know. That's just like, I guess how it started. And then there was the day that I went into labor, I was just so done with everyone. Like I remember going on this massive long walk with my dog without my phone. I was like, no, like everyone's messaging me like, oh, being like, thinking of you, you're still pregnant, all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, I'm still pregnant. I'm 38 weeks, guys. Like so mad, you know what I mean? So that day went on this massive long walk with my dog without my phone. I was like, I don't want to hear from anyone. Later on, my husband's like, yeah, you probably shouldn't do that because like you probably could like go into labor soon, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I mean, that night I was laying down with my dog and I was like, this is the last time that I'm going to sit here with my dog before my baby's here. And then an hour later, my waters broke.
Wow.
So then I just labored at home with him. My plan was to, pop a TENS machine on from the side and just kind of labor and follow its lead, so to say.
Yeah.
And that was like at 10 o'clock at night. So I just labored overnight. My husband went to sleep, where I later on found out he was just laying in bed going, what the heck, I'm about to have a baby. Like, I thought he was asleep the whole time. And he's like, no, I did not sleep an inch.
Oh,
like,
my gosh.
He's just there going, holy shit, like, this is it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
just all these internal thoughts.
Yeah.
And then, it was maybe around like 2, 3 a.m. I couldn't lay down any longer. So I just went into a spare room at that point, which was kind of like my little spot that I wanted to labor. And I didn't stay there for very long. It was a bit uncomfy. So I ended up getting in the bath. And by that point, I couldn't really communicate, or I guess I was past the state of like having conversation.
Yeah.
And throughout pregnancy, that was like a thing where it's like, oh, like, if you can't talk or your contractions this close, like that's a good indication to come into the birth center.
Yeah.
And I was, so my husband was there, timed my contractions on the phone to them, and like, time to come in. It's that classic, how it goes.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, like I did not want to go. Like an inch of me just did not want to get into that car and go to the birth center. And like, I think leaving the home was like the biggest intervention for me in his birth. And I just wish I followed my intuition and just stayed home, because what would have happened? Like the midwives would have come, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like they surely wouldn't have just like left me, right? Or like I would have had him and I would have free birth and would have been fine. Like, you know what I mean? But then I guess, I wasn't confident to do that. I wasn't confident to birth at home at that point.
Yeah.
So getting into the car eventually, I think it took me like 40 minutes just to like get into the car, honestly. So I was just like in such not a state, but I was like, nah, like I'm not going, like I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
And then, on this it might have been like a 25 minute drive to the birth center. And I have this like one vivid memory. My husband is like, it's only going to be this many contractions to the birth center and then we're going to be there. Like, so I just remember the whole drive, he's like counting down my contractions, like 19 more contractions to go. And in turn now I'm just like, shut the hell up. If you tell me one more time. Yeah. But like I was in that point where like I couldn't express those words. So I was having all this internal dialogue thinking, shut the hell up.
Yeah.
Like, what? Like so livid that he was counting down my contractions. I'm like, you're just counting down and I'm hearing all this pain. Like, you know what I mean? So anyways, we got to the birth center and things, really did slow down. So it was just that classic, like, you leave your safe space and birth kind of has to figure out where it's at again and like regain that sense of safety. So when I first got there, they're like, this chick's about to have a baby. Her midwife's not even on her way yet, because she's like, she lives ages away. We've got time. Like that. My midwife is very like relaxed. Like she was like, you're going to labor overnight. Like don't call me. Don't tell me. And I was like, that doesn't seem right. Shouldn't I you? So she was just very much like, very. I don't know what the term is. Yeah. So they're like, this chick's about to have a baby. Like someone's like, so it was like everyone was like ready for me to like give birth pretty much straight away. Yeah, things just did slow down that little bit. Like I got into the pool and it slowed labor down quite a lot. So then I got out of the pool and all this stuff. And then, so essentially in my pregnancy, my midwife had, and I take some responsibility for this, definitely. She was like, you know, if you feel a sensation to push, like it's time to start pushing. Like it's go time. You know what I mean? So like, I remember being in the shower and I was like having some kind of sensation to push. So, of course, I start pushing because like that's what I was led to believe, like is what you kind of do. But knowing now, I'm like, that pressure was not the pressure. You know what I mean? Like, I did not need to start pushing at that time. Like I said to my husband in my second pregnancy, I was like, Alex, if I was in labor right now with Dax and I had this pressure on my pelvic floor, I would be pushing. And I was like 37 weeks pregnant. You know what I mean? Like second thing around your body is just like that little bit more like feels everything. And I was like, that's just wild to me that I started pushing so early because I thought any little bit of pressure was that pushing.
Wow.
So I guess that really turned everything a bit pear-shaped, like honestly. So I pushed for 3 hours.
Yeah.
A lot of coach pushing, which was something like I really, I guess, didn't want. Like I had everyone just doing all these things to me to try get my baby to be born, essentially. Like, you know, purple pushing, what they say, like, you know, through contractions. I had midwives like pushing on my acupressure points on my ankles, you know, to try boost those contractions because towards the end they started to dwindle. I literally had bruises like on my ankles from like people pressing my acupressure points. I had, I literally pushed over every freaking corner and space of that room, that birth suite, just like, just wild now, like looking back at it. So towards the end, I was on the bed, which another thing that I didn't want. I guess in my mind, bed meant like more of a medical type of birth. But yeah, in the end, I did end up on the bed, and you know, same thing, coach pushing, all that kind of stuff. I had a second midwife. I pushed down on my belly while I was pushing, which was really, I don't want to. I guess horrific.
So like
pushing down on the top of my belly as I pushed. It's this really big thing in like Germany. Like it's like this. It's some kind of maneuver. Like it has a name, but So I just had a lot of things happen to me to try and get my baby to be born. Which I look back now, I'm like, if you all just left me alone, like half an hour, and like let me regroup and like maybe spent some time with my husband. Like, I think things could have been so differently. Like, if I just stopped attempting to birth my baby before he was born. But, you know, hindsight, I didn't know that and I didn't have that train of thought in the moment. So, in the end, you know, I'd been getting towards that 3-hour mark and I was given, I don't want to say option or choice, but I was told that it's like they've called me an ambulance to transfer me to the hospital or I have an episiotomy. And at that point, you know, getting transferred and going to the hospital was like my very last thing. I was like, I would do anything over that because I just felt like once I got to the hospital, it was game over. Like anything and absolutely everything would happen to me. Like that was kind of how I felt. Like if I moved to the hospital in my labor, like it would just be fully taken out of my control. And I think by that point I was pretty done. You know what I mean? Like I was just exhausted. I had towards the end, I honestly I hate thinking about it, but I barely had any kind of contractions. My body was obviously just in that like fight or flight, like something's not right. So I obviously opted for the episiotomy, which was not obviously ideal. But he was born and he was fine, like honestly, like perfect, like cried straight away, like we had that beautiful skin to skin. Like that was something that I will really say was great. Like they kind of just left us to our own devices. Like it was just us, my husband and my best friend was there for his birth and Pacey's birth as well. And it was just us and we had a lot of uninterrupted time. Like they would come in randomly and do a check or do my episiotomy and then they'd leave and they'd give us some more time and come back. But it's okay, Bubba. that was pretty much, the brink of it.
Yeah. Wow. Did you get to go home still after a couple of hours?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. So I think he was born at like, maybe like, what time was it? Like 5 to 2, and I think we were in the car by like 5:30.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay. Yeah.
like we went home quite quickly.
Yeah.
That was great. I was like, just get me home. Like, by that point, I was pretty done with even just being in the birth center, and it wasn't even like the full hospital. I was like, I just want to be in my own space and like not have people around me or touching me or doing something. You know what I mean? So I did love that. Like, getting to go home was really great. Yeah.
What was the healing like with the episiotomy?
Pretty rough. It wasn't great. So I also did that classic first time thing where like you don't rest a lot. Knowing what I know now, I'm like, you dumb bum, you should have just rested. But my episiotomy didn't heal great at all. It actually like split a little bit at the end, so the stitching came undone, so it just took like a really long time to heal. Going to the bathroom obviously was really uncomfortable, and then I also got a prolapse at 6 weeks.
Oh no.
Which I contribute to all the things in the coach pushing and he's going to be obviously so much pressure and damage to my pelvic floor. And
so between like having Dax and having Pacey, was there like, did you engage with like a pelvic floor physio or how was that like healing journey? So I saw like the day, I think it was like the week that Dax was born, like I'd already booked in the physio at 6 weeks. I was like, that was a non-negotiable. Like for me, I'd already seen her throughout my pregnancy with him, and I was like 6 weeks on the dot, like I'll be here. Because in my brain, I was like, I want to get back to exercise. I want to be doing that kind of stuff. So I literally think like, I think I messaged my physio like literally the day that he was born, be like, I've had my baby, like I had this happen, like I booked in for 6 weeks on the dot, like see you then. Like I was so keen for that. Which I'm so glad I did, because I also saw a doctor at like 4 weeks. I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks postpartum after my midwife care finished to check my episiotomy. And I was like, something's not right. Like, I'm pretty sure I have a prolapse. Can you just double check? And she was like, yeah, no, you're fine. You're like, there's nothing there. Like, whatsoever. And I was like, I don't like, it was that intuition thing as well. I was like, it doesn't feel right. And I know like I've just had a baby. And I know there is a sense of heaviness that you do have after that. But I was like, something isn't right. Like, I just knew. And she was like, yeah, like, you're fine. And my husband was like, well, like, you're good, babe. Like, it's all good. I'm like, no, like, something's not all good. So I was so glad that I had that 6 week checkup, because I'm like, the damage that I would have done to myself if I went off that doctor's, because by the time I went back at 6 weeks to my physio, I had a grade 2 prolapse. My vagina muscles weren't even recovered like from like Dax's birth. Like essentially after 6 weeks I was on like another 6 weeks of bed rest because I didn't rest and heal well in those first 6 weeks. So it was a journey. That was hard. Oh my gosh. And was that like a consideration in like becoming pregnant with Pacey, or?
Yeah, I definitely had, I guess, some fear around it for sure. I kind of had come to terms with the expectation that I would probably tear in my next birth just because I had an episiotomy and I had all that pelvic floor kind of stuff, if that makes sense. And I was like, okay, like if I tear, I'd rather tear any day over than what I've had experienced previously. And I was fine with that. I did a lot of work, I would say, like to get my pelvic floor back to being recovered. Like after Dax, I did a lot of work. And, you know, in my pregnancy with Pacey, my pelvic floor felt like the best. I was so mindful. I was like, I am going to have the best pelvic floor ever to give birth to this baby. Like, everything is going to be great. And if I just wanted to do everything that I could, so I felt like I was in control, and that whatever happened, I knew that I did the work that was right for me, if that makes sense. Like I guess I'd considered it, but I wasn't, I don't know. I wasn't
super anxious about it. And, you know, in terms of then thinking about like, you know, your next birth experience, like had you already decided before you got pregnant with Pacey that you would have a home birth, or like what was that journey?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As soon as I had Dax. Well, actually, not as soon as I had Dax. The first couple of months after I had Dax, I was like, wow, I had the best birth. Like, that was so good.
Wow.
And like, I had a lot of friends around me who didn't have, great birth experience. And I was like, yeah, man, I did it. Like, I had such a good birth experience. And it wasn't until later on when I started, becoming a doula and doing a little bit of training, I was like, oh, there's some stuff here.
Yeah.
Like, I did have a good birth, but there's some things that weren't good. And there's a lot of elements of my care and how I was treated that weren't good. I did have to unpack that a lot. And from there, right, Baba. From there, I was like, I'm having a home birth. Like, there's no doubt in my mind. And I didn't want to go. Well, I knew I couldn't go through Belmont, but even if I lived close, I was like, I don't think that I would. I guess just from how my first birth experience went. Like, I love what they offer. And it is amazing and it's great. But for me, I was like, I just don't think that's it. Yeah. So home birth with a private midwife was, always going to be how I birthed my second baby.
Yeah. Amazing. And so you get pregnant with Pacey. And at what point are you like booking in like the midwife? Like how did you choose your midwife?
Yeah. So I think I booked her in at like 7 weeks.
Yeah.
I think I had found out quite like early. Well, I went through this thing. So before we fell pregnant with Pacey, we were like, yeah, we're going to have a baby next year. So being this year, 2024. And then 3 days later, I found out I was pregnant. Always the way. Yeah. But like, those like days leading up to actually finding out, like I think back now, I'm like internally, like I knew that I was pregnant, but I was like in denial about it. So I was like one day back, I won't take a pregnancy test. Like, I'm pregnant, like it's fine. The next day I was like, oh no, like I need to know, you know what I mean? Like it was just this real like mental battle. But I guess as soon as I did officially know that I was pregnant, if that's how you want to say it, I touched base with a couple of midwives. I think I inquired with like 3.
Yeah.
And the one that I ended up choosing, she came to my house, just like meet me, stayed for like, I think she was here for like an hour or 2.
Yeah, wow.
And I think by 7 weeks I had booked her in and I was like, like this is it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So cool. And apart from obviously your birth like place being different, had you like thought about ways that you might do things differently this time?
In terms like of my birth.
Yeah.
I don't know if I thought about things. I guess the pushing stage. I was like, no one is telling me what to do whatsoever. Like I was very upfront with my midwife from the get go. I was like, I don't want you to tell me like what to do. I was like, that is going to be a huge trigger for me, and I need to know that I can do it. Like, I need to know that my body is capable, and if it isn't, if it's the same thing, like, that's fine, but I need to know that, like, I can do it. Yeah. So I was very much like, I don't want you to tell me what to do like, in any capacity, and she was fine. She was great. She very much so trusted me and my intuition and my body, and that was a really big thing. For me. So the pushing stage, that was probably the biggest thing. I was like, that baby's just coming whenever it's ready. Like, I don't want to have to physically do anything to like birth my baby. I guess I learned a lot about, the pushing phase and, the fetal ejection reflex. I'd learned a lot about that post-Dax and when I became, a doula. Yeah. So I was very much like, I just wanted that to be very untouched, I guess, and I really wanted the space to do that in my own strength. So that was a really big thing that I guess planned for and prepped for differently. Yeah.
And obviously, if the people around you thought the birth centre was a bit crazy, home birth is another big step. What was like? Did you receive any weird comments or more explicit eye rolls?
So oddly enough, I feel like I experienced like less, and maybe it's because by then I had become a doula, and I'm very open, I guess, on my Instagram with like how I perceive birth. And I've actually loved that platform for that. Like, I can just like voice my opinion, and like a lot of people I know follow me, so they know where I stand. So I think I don't think I got a lot of arrows. I got a lot of like, oh, like you're brave. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, oh, like,
okay.
I couldn't do that. Like that's so cool that you're doing it, but I couldn't.
Yeah.
But I do think by that point people were like, oh, like this is just same thing. This is just Courtney.
Yeah.
She's a doula.
The black sheep.
Yeah. Like I think like my mum, I think she had a couple of little fears. She was like, oh, like so if anything happens, like what happens? And I was like, yeah, like we're gonna have all the things here. Like I've got a midwife. Like
Yeah.
if anything happens, we'll just go to the hospital. Like, yeah. And I think I tried to stay very like relaxed about it to try not to portray anything. I mean, I trusted in 100%, but yeah, I didn't really get a lot of backlash the second time round, which is hard because I was having a home birth.
Yeah.
But yeah, more like, oh, good on you. I couldn't do that type thing.
Okay.
The most part of it. Yeah.
Had you already started like attending births or supporting women between Dax and Pacey?
Yeah, I had. Yeah. Okay. So I had done a couple of births in that kind of time frame, mostly hospital births, but I'd been at a home birth as well. Yeah. But yeah, I had been.
Yeah. And like did that kind of just reinforce like your decision to home birth or?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like I will admit I have supported a lot of positive hospital births or most of the women that I have supported have had unmedicated, really low intervention vaginal births and most of their experiences have been really, really good. So, but there was definitely elements I was like, well, that's why I'm birthing at home.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Smaller things like the doctor's just being there just in case and like, get out of the space. You know what I mean? Like, there were just little things in each birth that did reiterate like why I was birthing where I was and I guess just installed that trust and clarity even more in me for sure.
Yeah. And did you decline like the similar stuff with Pacey's pregnancy?
Yeah, so I did. I didn't do any of the testing. Once again, I did less ultrasounds with his as well. So with Dax, I did like, all the classic ones like 8, 12, 20, and then I did one at 36 weeks with Dax because my placenta was too low in my 20-week scan, and they were like, you might need a cesarean. I'm like, so I just did, I think I did the 12 and the 20-week one with Pacey. Yeah. Apart from everything else, I declined all the other stuff, like gestational diabetes and GBS.
And how often did you meet with your midwife?
Gosh, it would have been, I think it was, trying to think back. I think it would have been like monthly from the start, maybe like every 4 to 6 weeks it was initially. Yeah. And then towards, I'm just trying to think. I think it was, 4 weeks. And then towards the end of my pregnancy, it was every 2 weeks. Yep. And then I think I saw her maybe at 38 weeks. And then I had Pacey at 38 and 6.
Yeah, wow. Yeah.
That doesn't sound right. I'm not sure. It was frequent.
Yeah, frequently, yeah. And did you meet the second midwife during your pregnancy?
I did, yeah. So at 36 weeks, actually, we did like a, so it must have been weekly from 36 weeks because I met the second midwife at 36 weeks and we did like a big like birth planning type session, just going over like my preferences and all the things that I wanted, I guess, in my birth, which wasn't a lot. Yeah. But yeah, so I met her, that 36-week mark, Yeah.
And you said earlier that you had your best friend at the birth of Dax and also with Pacey. So do you want to like give some background to that?
Yeah, so I guess my best friend kind of acted as my doula in a sense, like having that second support person. And she was also a huge reason why I became a doula, as well, because she was in my birth with Dax, and just having that second support person and that female kind of energy and that person that was just there to solely support like us. Yeah. Like in my birth with Dax, like there wasn't a lot of chances for my husband to not be with me. Yeah. So Bree my best friend kind of really acted as that, that middle ground. If he needed something, she'd get something for him. If I needed something, she was there. Yeah. So she's, a huge reason why I chose to become a doula, because I was like, that is so needed in the birth space. Yeah. Like I couldn't imagine doing that without her there. Yeah. I also had her there for Pacey as well. And yeah, same thing. She just is there in that space just to hold it if I need it, to reassure me, to offer that, that little bit more emotional support.
Yeah.
I feel like the partner is quite physical for me anyways, that my partner is like squeezing my hips every contraction, because that's like my favorite thing when I'm in labor, and she's, holding my hand, encouraging me through and supporting me in that kind of sense. And that was really beautiful. I can't imagine doing it without her.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. That's like so special that you have someone that you trust so much with such like a intimate part of your life, but then also can like provide like the continuity as well, like to have I did an interview the other day, and she'd had 4 home births, and the primary midwife had been present in some capacity for all 4 births. And I just thought that's like,
it gives me goosebumps.
Yeah, how beautiful, because like, oh my gosh, you get to know each other like so well. And if you have like a friend that, has an interest and wants to be there and that you trust, like that's so beautiful. Did you have anybody else, like, so you would have the 2 midwives, your partner? Was Dax going to be present?
Yeah. So that was a really big thing. I wanted him to be there so bad. Like I just had envisioned like him being there, but I get emotional thinking about it. But I was also like, if not knowing how he was going to be or how the birth was going to go, I had a lot of different, I guess, options, and like if depending what happened, I guess, on the day, if that makes sense. So I really wanted him to be there, but I also was like, well, if he's not
vibing it,
coping, or if he's not enjoying it, I didn't want to like force this thing on him and like traumatize him, because like we know that we carry that through if we look back at the story. And so like, if it happened in the day, I had something organized for that. If it happened overnight, I had a little bit of a game plan for that. So I just had a lot of different ideas around what would happen like with him, with the idea, hoping that he would be there. So I had my midwife, my second midwife, eventually, and then my husband, my best friend, and then Dax was there for most of it as well.
Yeah, that's so special. Do you want to walk us through the birth of Pacey then?
Yes, I would love to. So same thing. I got to 38 weeks, and that was hard, like in the lead up, because I was like, am I going to go at the same gestation? I was going to 42 weeks. I was like, I was very obviously, if I go to 42 weeks, that's fine. Like it is what it is. I will wait. I very much believe that my babies will come when they're ready. But that week was really hard, I guess, leading up to it mentally. I was like, could be 6 days, could be 4 weeks, could be longer, I don't know. So that was really hard, but I did have this sense that it was going to be soon. The afternoon before, I would have been 38 and 5, and I was getting ready to go to the gym, and I was like, I'm definitely going to meet my baby soon. I just had this sensation like I did with my dog. But this time I was like, because I would tell people about the story of my dog. They're like, all right. I feel like people just thought I was making it up. So I was like, no, like I'm writing this down. So I have a little note in my phone. It's like 4:40 on the Friday afternoon. I was like, I'll see you soon, Pacey. Like that's literally just what it said. I was like, I just want to do it.
And he goosebumps. It's going to make me cry.
He was born at 1 p.m. the next day.
Wow,
Yeah, so I went into labor. Well, labor started around 6 o'clock in the morning as Dax woke up. I probably could have been like in very early labor overnight, like it wasn't a great sleep. But I remember Dax waking up and I was like, still pregnant, that's fine. We had this big adventure plan for the day. We're going to like catch the ferry to this park that was like an hour away from my house. And like, I was like, yeah, cool. Like, let's do that. And then, I felt my first, I guess, contraction. I was like, oh, I don't know. It could be just a feeling. I've been feeling things all week. I just kept it to myself, didn't tell anyone. I was like, we'll just see what happens. And we just went along with our morning, and I was getting little sensations every now and then. And my husband was like, oh, like I'm so keen for today. Like we're going to have so much fun, and like really hyping Dax up. And I'm like, oh, I don't think we're going to go. And he's like, why? Like he was like, what do you mean? I was like, I think I'm in labor. And he's like, pardon? I was like, yeah, I think I'm in labor. And like, it would have only been like 7:30 by this point. Like, it hadn't been a long time, maybe even 7.
Yeah.
It hadn't been a long time. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm in labor. And he's like, just like, his brain's like, all right, let's go. Like, where's the birth pool? Like, it's happening. Like, let's get everything ready. And I'm like, oh, like, let's just give it a little bit of time.
Yeah.
But by that, like, he was like, no, I'm just going to get it out just in case. Like, I think he was like, she's obviously in labor. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, he very much trusted that if I was saying I was in labor, like, I probably was. So he just, started doing, I guess, all the logistical things, like getting the birth pool ready and stuff like that. And then I just ended up popping on my TENS machine and laboured with him and with Dax. Dax was driving his cars around the birth pool. He had his second little TENS machine on around his neck and would, sit with me sometimes with like our TENS machines like nice and close together, and he loved that.
Yeah.
I've got some beautiful videos of like us just blowing bubbles like in between contractions and like me pausing to like go through my contractions. So that was really cool. Like he was just there. And then I pretty much just laboured like that for, like maybe till around 10 o'clock. And earlier on we had messaged my mum that, oh, like I'm in labour. Like, do you think you could just take Dax out for a couple of hours? But I don't know how long it's going to be, just so like he wasn't in the house the whole day, not knowing how long things are going to take. So then I think she rocked up around like 10:30, and by that point I had gotten to the stage where like I needed Alex around to squeeze my hips, and I wanted him a bit more present rather than just like doing his own thing or like being with Dax. So the timing of it was really well timed. And I just remember my mum getting here and I was just like in a state once again. I have these emotional states and I'm in labor, and I was like, don't take him for long, just like so like I think my body and like knew that I was going to have a baby really soon. And I was just like very emotional about the fact that Dax was being taken and I really wanted him to be there, and I was really scared that he was going to miss it. And I think I freaked my mum out. She was like, oh, is everything okay? Like, what's happening here? And we're like, yeah, it's fine. She's like, have you called the midwife? And we're like, yeah, we hadn't, but that's fine. We haven't told her that. But after that, like I told my midwife, I should say, I guess, like, oh, like I think I'm in labor as well. Like this is what's happened. So I guess about from 10:30, I did the same thing, laboured with my TENS machine on, with my husband squeezing my hips. And then after that, people started like to filter through, which I have no memory of. So like I think my best friend arrived first, and then my 2 midwives arrived, and I was just, in my zone. Like I couldn't tell you when they arrived, what happened in that time. Like I don't even remember where I was in the house. Like I just remember being so in my labour brain. Like I just had no idea of what was going on around me, which like I love, because I'm like, that's how it should be. Like that's how it should be when you're birthing. And then I also had this weird thing in Pace's labour where like every contraction I had to like have a surface, like rub my hand on. It was super strange. Just like every contraction like that got me through. It was weird. Anyways, I hadn't gotten to the pool or anything by that point. I was just labouring around the house. And then I somehow, like I said, I have no memory. Like at least I don't know how I got there, but I got into this corner where the birth pool was in like the middle of our living room, and then we have like our kitchen bench which laps over a bit. And I was like in the corner behind the birth pool under the kitchen bench. I don't know.
It's exactly how you imagine like a wild cat or something.
That's what I was about to say. It's like you hear of all these, things being like, oh, like, when we're going labour, we hide away and stuff like that, or we find a safe space. And I'm like, that's literally like what I did.
Whoa.
What I did. And I remember Dax came home at that point, and he's like, he'd just been out and seen like some fire truck and like gotten a bunch of like random things. And I have this memory of being on all fours in between my like surges, of him like showing me this little paper fire truck, and he was like so excited, and I was like, oh, just feeling so elated that he was here. Like I was like, oh, like you're here, that's great. He's not coming quite yet, but like you're here, and that's really important. then Bree, my friend, went and put him to sleep, and he had a little bit of a nap. And then, like I said, my midwife and stuff arrived, and then I was like, oh, I think I might have went to the bathroom, and then took me like, probably 20 minutes to get back. And at that point, my waters then broke.
Yeah.
And then I just instantly felt Pacey drop into my pelvis.
Wow.
And I had never experienced that with Dax, obviously, like with the pushing and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, I'm about to have a baby. Like, I was like, this is it. Like, It was like, what, that, I'll never forget that sensation. Just like my water's breaking, and then like it made that audible like pop.
Wow.
And then just feeling like literally just like this sudden like drop. It like it was absolutely like wow. So yeah, we're like, all right, cool. Like, let's get in the pool. And this might have been like 11:45, I think. I have like all the timestamps from like all my photos that like people took. So I think it was like 11:45, and I get into the pool, and my husband jumps in, and same thing, just doing hip squeezes, like going through my contractions, very like inwards, like wasn't making a lot of noise or anything like that. Had my birth comb throughout each of them. And then, it might have been like an hour later, I felt like what they call like that ring of fire.
Yeah. And
that was like the most intense 2 minutes of my entire life. Like, I had all these thoughts. I was like, you dumb bum, why are you here? Why are you birthing at home? Just that like, what have I done wrong? Like, why are you here? Like, you've made all the wrong decisions. Because, with a contraction or like a surge or whatever you want to call it, like the pain goes away, right? Like you have your contraction and then it goes away and you're like, cool, you get a little bit of a chance to get ready for the next one. But if you've ever felt that ring of fire, like that burning sensation just like stays there. And I was like, if this stays here, I don't know how I'm going to do the rest. And like, that wasn't even his head. I was just like, just that feeling of like, obviously the top of him crowning.
Yeah.
And I was like to my midwife, I was like, I can't do it. I gotten that adrenaline rush and I was talking a little bit more, but I was like, nah, like I can't do it. And my husband went to squeeze my hips and I was like, no, like don't touch me. Because obviously my baby was right there. And then, anyways, that sensation did go away, thankfully.
Yeah.
And then I just breathed Pacey's head out.
Whoa.
I didn't push at all.
Wow.
He breathed his head out. He came out with a little nugal hand, so his hand was up by his head.
Yeah.
We later found out that his head was 37.5 centimeters plus a hand, so like pretty decent.
Yeah.
I just breathed his head out completely. And then once his head was born, I was in very much that state where like I didn't want anyone to tell me like what to do still. And I was still having, really strong contractions, and I could literally feel him like rotating. Like I could, obviously like they
rotate. Crazy feeling.
I could feel him fully rotating my midwife. It'd been a long time. So like between his head being born and his body, it was 7 minutes.
Wow, yeah.
Before everything, like he was completely born.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you know what it's like in a hospital, they give you like 2 minutes from like when the head's born to like everything else to be born. And I remember in that 7 minutes just like wanting to stand up, like my brain, like I just wanted to stand, but my brain was like, his head's out. If I stand up, it's going to be a shock. You know what I mean? A shock to get him out of the water straight away. So I was like, no, don't stand.
Yeah.
As soon as I stood, his body, his body was born.
Yeah.
Like it was obviously my intuition in my body, like telling me to stand the heck up.
Yeah.
But like he was born completely fine. And that was it. He was here. My husband, was behind me the whole time, watched him rotate, like was there as he was born.
Yeah.
He's brought up underneath my legs and straight onto my chest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So beautiful. Did you tear?
No, I didn't tear. I had a tiny little hairline graze on the side of my labia where his hand was.
Yeah.
I've heard that before. Yeah. But it didn't need to be. Like my midwife said, I could stitch it, but like honestly, there's not really any point. And I was like, well, I don't want to stitch. I don't want to be taken out of this space and kind of not that a tear and a stitch is a medical thing. Like I was like, I just don't feel like I need it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was it. Yeah.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I just I'm so confused still about why they did the episiotomy. Like, that's just...
Well, yeah, I think, yeah. It's like I said, I think if I was given the time to recoup, I could like without it, but it was just like, and you know, I'd reached the timeline. Well, I'd actually overstayed the timeline. Like, it's 2 hours there for pushing. If anything over that, you're meant to get transferred or you know, things are meant to happen. So yeah, like my body didn't need it. You know what I mean? Like you know, first birth is always that little bit different. Like, it hasn't done it before. They definitely do feel different, but like, there's nothing to say that my body couldn't have done it the first time. You know what I mean? Like, I birthed Pacey like without any kind of tear or whatsoever the second time round. Like, so I definitely like I can't think about it too much. I'm like, I wish I could change Dax's story.
I mean, like, ditto. Like, I've had 2 home births and similar sort of story, I guess, in that, after the first one, I was like, I had a home birth. I'm, like, amazing, you know? Like, go me. And it wasn't until, like, later, especially, like, having, Frankie's birth, and it's just so different. It's so different.
I do feel like your first birth, even if it's not like the most amazing experience, it teaches you a lot and it paves the way for your second and your first. You know what I mean? Like, I would have done, like, I wouldn't have had the birth that I had with Pacey if I didn't have the birth that I had with Dax. You know I mean? Like, I wouldn't have been so hard and heavy on nobody telling me what to do in that pushing stage. You know what I mean? It would have been very different. So I am grateful for sure. Like, obviously, like, I do kind of grieve the fact that I didn't get to have that really beautiful, elated birth, like, with Dax, and that does suck, like, in all honesty. But I'm also like, he paved the way for who I am, not only as a mother, but like, you know, as a doula, and like with having birthed my second as well. So what has your postpartum been like with Pacey? It's been really beautiful. I was really the first month I was like, I'm just resting.
Amazing.
Entire month. So like I mentioned with Dax, I didn't rest at all. I thought I was resting because I was doing so much less than I was postpartum, you know what I mean? So I thought I was resting, but I had like been taking the dog for a walk by like first week postpartum, like out for birthday lunches. We've been out to do all this stuff, like just silly things. So with Pacey, and obviously like with the prolapse and all that kind of stuff, I was like, I want to do everything that I can to protect my body and to give it that time to heal and to recover. So my plan was to do the 5-5-5 rule. So 5 in bed, 5 near bed. 5, that
cool.
Kind of thing. So I ended up doing it pretty much for the whole month. So I just kind of spent the whole month in bed just resting. I got like a postpartum meal service. So I got food delivered to me. We did a meal train. My husband ended up getting a month off because I birthed 2 weeks before school holidays. So it just timed out perfectly. Just not be timed at all. So he had a whole month off here. And he was just on Dax duty, I like to call it. He was just like with Dax pretty much that whole month, and just really enabled me to have that space to rest, to transition into motherhood that second time around. And it's like the best thing. I always think about it. I'm like, man, that month was like the actual best. Like, it was hard. Like, I will say some days were really mentally hard, like to, you know, those days postpartum where you're like, oh, I feel good. I can do a little bit of something. I feel pretty good. But like learning from Dax is like I would feel good, and then I would go for a walk carrying my child like on my chest, and then like 2 days later I would be, you know, back to being sleep deprived, getting massage symptoms, having really bad prolapse symptoms. So I learned a lot from that, and I was just like, you know, I feel good. I can do a little bit of something. I'll go sit out in the backyard and we'll get a little bit of sun. But I really tried to keep it really minimal, and that was the best. Like, I look back and that was the best month, just like taking it slow and slowly transitioning into our new life. And we didn't have a lot of visitors or anything like that. So it was really just like us for a whole month essentially.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so beautiful. And what's like obviously boy mums.
Yes.
And our sons are sort of similar. Like
Yeah,
Murphy's
yeah.
going to be 4 this month, and
Yeah.
Frankie was born in June.
Yeah.
So he's like, I keep forgetting, like 9 or 10 months now. But
Yeah,
like
cool.
for you, what is adjusting to boy mum life
Yeah.
with 2 boys been like?
I do love being a boy mum.
Yeah.
Like, I just envision myself being a boy mum. Like, I'm not very, like, girly, so I just can't imagine having a girl. Like, obviously, like, it'd be great, but, like, I do love being a boy mum. But, yeah, the transition was pretty good. That was probably one of the biggest things I was worried about. Me and Dax were we co-slept to, like I said, when I was 36 weeks pregnant. I breastfed him till I was 20 weeks pregnant. He self-weaned.
Wow, yeah.
We just did, like, everything together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we were so close. He only went to family daycare, like, once or twice a week. So it was just us. And he was very much like, I don't hate the word mummy's boy, but we were just very close.
Yeah.
Like, we had this really beautiful relationship.
Yeah.
So I was really worried that he wouldn't, I guess, understand.
Yeah.
Because the whole pregnancy, he just had no concept of the idea of being pregnant. Like, just no idea, like, whatsoever. So, yeah, I was worried how that would go, but we transitioned really well. He ended up being there for the birth of Pacey, actually. I didn't even say that.
Oh, of course.
He woke up as Pacey's head was born, and then my friend went and got him, and he came out and he watched Pacey be born, which I think really helped with the transition. Like, afterwards, he was that baby belly, like, it all kind of linked up. Like, I can't imagine what it would have been like if he woke up from a nap and there was, like, a whole nother human here. I think for him it would have been like, like, very, like, what the heck type thing. So that just worked out beautifully, and to have him there was, like, just so cool. Like, I have all these photos of, like, me, like, with my placenta attached and Pacey, like, breastfeeding, and, like, Dax just sitting next to me, like, in the nude, eating, like, his lollies and, like, his little snacks and stuff. And, like, so like, him being there was, like, the best thing. And I do think that really helped his transition. In saying that, there definitely were some very chaotic moments in that first month, just, like, testing the boundaries, you know what I mean? Like, doing things that he wouldn't usually. He just needed to see, like, where he, I guess, fitted in. Like, him sitting at the end of the bed, like, he just got food out of the cupboard, just sitting there, just out of reach for me. You know what I mean? Just, like, little things, or, like, knocking plants over that had been there for his whole entire life. Just, like, little things, like, I'm like, you wouldn't do that usually, but he was just testing the boundaries, and that's fine. Like, it's a huge decision. But, like, now, like, Pacey is Dax's favorite person. There's no doubt about that. Like, they're, like, little best friends, like, already. Like, the first thing Dax wants to do when Pacey wakes up is, like, run and give him a cuddle, or, like, he does love him a lot, and that's been really nice. We haven't had any, like, no, like, the hitting or, like, that kind of stuff, or, like, that's my mum. It's been really good. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your stories.
Okay, thanks so much for having me.
Of course. Do you have anything that we missed or that you'd like to add, or?
Gosh, I don't think so. I feel like afterwards I'll be like, oh, I should have said this.
That's always how it is.
Hey, like, I think, I guess, like, one other thing I did have, like, and I don't, like, it's not, I do think that this is one of the things I love about home birth. It's like, you're not bound by, you know, medical things. It's, like, very much based on, like, who you are and, like, how things have gone. Like, it's very much bigger picture, which is my opinion. So after Pacey, I had a larger, like, blood loss.
Okay.
So I lost, like, I mean, they never really know, but, like, 750 to, like, 800 mils of blood. And in a hospital, like, anything over 500 is, like, classified as a postpartum hemorrhage. And I guess, for after I had Pacey, like, everything was fine. Like, my stats were fine. My blood pressure was fine. I was feeling fine. I was able to go to the bathroom. I was able to walk, all that kind of stuff. So, like, we didn't need to do anything. We'll just monitor it and see how you feel, like, over the next couple of days. But, like, that is something that I love about a home birth, because if I was in a different setting, whether it would be a birth center or a hospital, like, that would have been very different if I had a 500, like, over 500 mil, like, lead a lot of loss of blood. So even, like, with Pacey's head being born and his body not been born for after 7 minutes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it just gives you the time and the space and the time and the space to consider the bigger picture and how the woman and the baby like actually is intervening just because on paper it's meant to be something. So I do like, you know, I do love that about home birth, and I think that just makes it so individual and so almost like safer because there's not interventions just happening for the sake of it.
Because somebody because it's all guessing. There's not like when you're learning to be a student midwife, you are literally like in labs like with red food coloring stuff, guessing like the amounts of stuff. And when it's like such a silly thing as like, oh, well, I guess it to be 500 mils, like the impact that can have on somebody in such a rigid system is like pretty significant. So
yeah. I remember listening to, I don't know what podcast it was, but like, like we all deal with blood loss differently. You know, someone could have a less than 500 mil loss of blood loss and not be okay.
Yeah.
But someone could have over a liter and be completely fine. Like, and like for me, like, I mean, I was a little bit like pale, and like that was probably the biggest like symptom like of the blood loss like for me. But like within like a day or two, like I was let's not say back to myself because I just had a baby, but like those symptoms of that loss were completely fine, and I was healthy and everything like was well. You know what I mean? So
I feel like we must have listened to the same podcast because I have the exact same memory from recent times. Cool. Thank you so much, Courtney.
Thanks so much for having me.